Good morning, movers and shakers, and it's time for your 10 o'clock Obsessed live show with me, Annette, and my amazing guest this morning, Cathryn Mora, who is going to give us a little sneak peek into cruising. Oh, hey, Cathryn, thank you for joining me.
Oh, I'm very excited to be here talking about cruising. Not that type of cruising, the type that you do on cruise ships.
Oh, yeah. We're not getting in the car and going cruising for chicks or for blokes. Because we're far too busy for that type of thing. But you worked on cruise ships for a long time as an entertainer, didn't you?
Well, I actually worked on ships 10 years apart. So when I was in my early 20s, I worked on them, and that's quite a funny story how I got into that. But then 10 years later, when my marriage broke down, I actually went back and worked on ships again in my 30s.
So what attracted you to going on cruise ships? I mean, like you trapped on this big thing in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, well, in what would it have been, like 94, when I was in final year uni, 92, 93, 94, 94, and I went to QUT in Brisbane, and I was studying Bachelor of Business Communications, but my major was film and television production, right? And I loved photography, got really into photography. I'd never even heard of cruise ships, really. We didn't really have the internet back then so much, and I didn't really know that they existed, I suppose.
Except for the Love Boat.
And
Love Boat.
And then my photography lecturer said to me one day, just pulled me aside randomly and said, hey, I thought you might be interested in something. He said, one of my old students from a few years ago just came home from overseas, and she was telling me how she got a job as a photographer on a cruise ship. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, that's weird. That's interesting. And he said, yeah, she was in London, and then she saw this ad. She responded to the ad, and she ended up cruising all over the world. And then she met the love of her life, and now they're back here and they're getting married and all that. And I went, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. And then, you kind of file it away. And then a couple of years later, I was in London, and I saw an ad. There used to be, for anyone who's lived in London, they used to have like Girl About Town and stuff. Those little free magazines that they give out on the tube. And they have lots of job ads, classifieds in them and stuff like that. And this ad said, do you want to work on a cruise ship, blah, blah, blah. And then you had to send £5 in an envelope to this address to get this little working on cruise ship booklet, which actually I found somewhere a few years ago in one of my boxes, this little booklet. And in that booklet, it had a list of all the places that you could apply for jobs to work on ships, because ships employ people directly, and then agencies kind of employ people. So hair and beauty people work for Steiner and, different things. So image photography supplied photographic staff. I sent my CV to them. They called me the day they received it. They were in Miami, in Florida. They called me the day they received it, and they said, we've just had someone be airlifted off the cruise ship with appendicitis. We really need to replace her. Can you come to an interview tomorrow in London, because our guy is flying there to do interviews in London? I went to a hotel. It wasn't dodgy, like to a meeting room in a hotel, and had an interview. And he said, you've got the job. Can you leave in about 3 days? We'll expedite, is that a word, your American visa. And I got a visa and flew to Miami like 3 days later.
Wow.
And then they sent me to my first ship, and that's how I got onto my first ship in the photo team.
Isn't that amazing how life can just turn on a dime? But why were you in London? What were you doing while you were there?
Well, because I'm Australian. And I feel like everyone goes to London, when they're 20, when you finish uni, I felt like no one really talks about it now. Maybe that's because the world's changed, but I felt like everybody I knew was going to London. And I had a British grandfather, so I had like an ancestry visa thing, which allowed me to live there for 4 years. I went there, and I was just temping, and then got this job. And although I did quit after only, I don't know, a few months, 3 or 4 months, maybe 5 months, I quit and went back to London because I hated aspects of it.
Oh, what were the bits that you hated?
So the great part about my job, so I was in the photography team, but I actually ran a shop on board called the F-Stop shop. So we used to sell film because, of course, that's when everyone shot on 35mm film. We sold film and we printed photos and sold cameras and things like that. Now, that was great because when you're in port, so they tend to dock early in the morning and then they'll stay in port all day until about 5 p.m. and then they sail through the night, right, to another destination. When you're in dock, none of the shops can be open because of customs issues. So we would dock early in the morning. I had the whole day off until 5 o'clock every night. And I worked from 5 till 11 with an hour off for dinner where someone would look after the shop or else we'd close it. So that was great. But I found ships can be very cliquey. And if you're in a small team, like I was with the photo team, you can have a great team or a not so great team, like in any workplace. And depends obviously on your manager as well, like the tone they set for the team. And I was just not having the best of times in my team, but I certainly had the best job. And then the girl who'd had the appendicitis was coming back. So one of the other team members told me, look, she's going to come back and you're going to lose that job because they're going to give her that job. And because I actually knew how to do photographs, they're going to make you go and do photos. But when I saw the life the photographers had, I didn't want to do that. So I resigned because, they'd have to get up early and shoot all day in the sun. And then there's all this pressure of how many photos they had to shoot, you had to, and how many they would sell and stuff like that. It was a lot of pressure to make money.
Sounds like it's a little bit cutthroat.
Yeah, it's very, how they put all the photos up after formal night and everything on ships, they sell. There was a lot of pressure to sell those. And they would say, to the photographers, right, we're this many rolls down, we haven't sold this many, blah, 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 blah. And there's a whole bunch of people who get paid to take those photos and sell them. It's not a commission type thing, but everyone gets a percentage of the overall sales. Yeah. So if you're not selling, everyone earns less. So there's a lot of pressure.
I went on my first cruise at Christmas, and as a guest, I loved it. I'm addicted and a little disappointed that coronavirus has put a kibosh on my plans, but we will get over it. But I did notice that the photographers were just go, 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 go. And I said to my husband, if they actually dropped the price of the photos, then maybe more people would buy them because, you're paying $35 for, an 8x4 print. And I'm going, that's just ridiculous. I'll just take my own photo.
Yeah, and look, that's obviously hurt them a lot, the whole selfie thing with phones and everything, because, of course, when I did it, smartphones didn't exist. So there wasn't that possibility, and people loved having their photos, and they used to make hundreds of thousands on a cruise. I used to copy the cruise video. They had a VHS video where it had the highlights of the cruise and it's set to music, whatever. Well, it's kind of fake, right? So they had videographers and they would shoot, but what they did is they had a set video that was all done, and then they would just slot in certain shots from that cruise, and the rest were from old cruises. But because there are thousands of people on there, people didn't go, oh, that person wasn't on the cruise, because they didn't know. Every now and then people would say, that's not, we didn't go there, or, there might have been a storm that week and we missed an island. They'd say, we weren't there, that kind of thing. But
that's dodgy.
no one ever noticed,
Oh, that's so funny. So you left cruising and you went, stuff this, you're all buggers. What drew you back?
Well, at the time, when I looked around the ship, the people who I felt like had the best job were the cruise staff. So they get paid to socialise. And I thought, and they get to sing in the show and do all that sort of thing. And, I'm an ex-performer. I studied, dancing and stuff like that. I really wanted to go and do that. So when I left, I went back to London, I actually applied for a job as cruise staff. And this is in 1997, 98, something like that. I applied for a job and they said, yep, you're in. I did a video of me singing and I can't even remember. And they said, yes, let us know when you're free and we'll let you know when the next person comes off a ship. So they might have had 20 ships. And when one person would go on vacation, they'd fly you into that ship and to take over from that person. So I did that. But what happened was basically a friend of mine was getting married, and it took me a while to be available. And then I met someone and I got into a relationship, right? So he obviously didn't want me going off on cruise ships. So about 10 years later, after our relationship was finished, I thought, you know what? I'm going to tick off all the things on my bucket list. And one of the things I wanted to do was go back onto ships and be cruise staff. So at the age of, I don't know, I think I was 31 or 32, I went back and did it again. I was in my dream job of a PR agency, and that had issues. So
yes, you're in PR.
Yeah, as you can well imagine. So I quit that job without anything else to go to. I started applying for cruise ships, and the day after I quit, I'd started applying before I quit, and I didn't have any response. But the day after I handed in my notice, I got an interview, and 6 weeks later, I was in Los Angeles boarding a ship.
Wow. It all sounds really glamorous. And I know when I was on the cruise ship, you know, there was the stairs going down to the crew quarters. And like, that's the place that I really wanted to go suss out, because it's like, you guys all seem to be having so much fun. Is it really fun, or is it like, not?
Look, I've got some friends now who are still on ships from that were my teammates then, and that was at least like 12 years ago, or more than 12 years ago, 13 years ago. Partially it's because they love it, and partially is you get past this, you get over this point where you actually don't know what you do in the real world anymore. And they call it like the real world, you know, that the cruise ship isn't the real world. And people don't really have that many transferable skills when they go into the real world. So certainly some people love it, right? And but there are lots of things I didn't like about it. Firstly, you know, you're stuck with the same people day in, day out, trapped 24/7. Now, obviously, people come and go, so there are pros and cons of that. On one hand, you want fresh people so you can meet people, but on the other hand, because it's a transient kind of life, people don't really, I feel, get to know you very well, because they know they're never going to see you again, or they're probably never going to see you again. So they don't bother to really get to know you and form deep friendships. And there was a bit of a joke in my, so when I was junior assistant cruise director in our cruise staff team, there was this sort of joke that when someone would disembark at the end of their contract, and they would, you know, disembark Sunday morning or whatever day we were in Fort Lauderdale, and the new person would come on that afternoon. So one person would get off, and then the new person would get on that same day, right? When we had the cruise staff meeting the next morning, the cruise director or assistant cruise director would say, oh, you know, so sorry that Annette has left us. And everyone would go, Annette who? Right? It was always this running joke, but it wasn't that funny, because actually it was true. Like, people just moved on so quickly. But there was also like rife kind of cheating and backstabbing, and like the behavior of people was just horrific.
Sounds like the schoolyard.
Way worse.
Worse. Oh my God. And then you're trapped.
Totally. And people, look, I was single, I wasn't an angel, but some people take that to the next level as well, you know. So a lot of married guys would have a girlfriend on the ship, and then when their wife would come on to visit, the girlfriend would just, like, say officers and stuff, the guys who have their own cabins, the wife would come, the girlfriend would move out of their cabin for 2 weeks while the wife was there. She would pretend she didn't know him. Everyone would pretend that it was, you know, that person didn't exist. And when the wife would leave, the girlfriend would move back in that night. And it just didn't.
Oh, that's so tacky.
Yeah, but not uncommon. And people, you know, there were two girls, for example, who were both in the beauty, they're both Steiners, right? Both in the beauty team. And a guy had come, one of the trainers who used to go around to all the ships to give them, you know, training on sales, like retail sales and stuff, how to, you know, increase the retail sales. he was this quite handsome, charismatic guy, right? So he was coming onto our ship to do his week of training, but one of the girls had slept with him the last time he was on the ship, right? So she was really excited. So he slept with a different girl on every ship every week, right? Best job in the world for a young man, right? So she was really excited that he was coming back. And she was like, oh, he's coming back this week. I can't wait to, see him, kind of thing. And one of the other girls said, what? So that another girl, another Steiner, had been transshipped from another ship while she had been with him when he was on her ship. Right? Now, if that was another woman, maybe another woman would have went, you know what? I don't want sloppy seconds. I'm out. Right?
Tapping out.
Tapping out. Not what happened at all. So they got into a bit of an argument over it. I think they probably weren't the best of friends anyway, but they got into a bit of an argument about it. And I think this actually made it into my book. I don't know if this is in the final cut or not. I can't remember now. But so he arrives on the ship. And, of course, they're both like, trying to charm him on the first day. And after work that night, they're in the crew bar and having drinks and everything, a lot of drinking. No drugs, but a lot of drinking. And they're both like flirting with him and both wearing their sexiest little, outfits. And then he goes home with girl one, right? When I say goes home with, took her to his cabin. Girl two was really annoyed. So she went and slept with another guy who girl one liked, whose fiance was on vacation. She went and slept with this Italian officer, right? The second night, girl two slept with the manager guy, and girl one went and slept with the Italian officer whose fiance was on vacation.
Ew.
And then on the third night, another girl who had nothing to do with it slept with the Italian officer. And those two girls went between all week, swapped with that manager guy. And, I just went, oh my, who does that? It was so gross,
Right.
As I said, if you're both single, you can do what you want, of course. If you're honest and you're both single and you're telling the truth about it, of course, do what you like. But I feel like there are limits, even to going crazy, there should be some limits, and they were often not observed.
Oh my goodness. Oh, if you've just joined us, I'm talking to Cathryn Mora, who is an ex-cruise ship employee. We're going back a few years. She's done stuff since then, but we're having a bit of a chat about some of the things that go on in crew quarters, which I'm really quite fascinated by, because that barrier down to the crew quarters is almost like a red flag to go, come on down and check it out.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned that you've written a book about your time on cruise ships. Sounds like it should be a movie.
Well, funny you should say that. I actually have just been talking to a publicist about getting it optioned as a TV show, because when it came out, I had a publicist in LA, and she had a friend from Sony TV who said this should be a TV show, but they wanted to make it into more of a spin-off reality show, and I wasn't keen on that. I wanted to do something scripted. So that didn't really go anywhere, but it just came up only literally in the last couple of weeks that this publicist was talking to me about, promoting the book again. It's actually a novel. I should have one here. I should have got it out before, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
I've got one in a box. Sex, Lies and Cruising. So it's actually a novel inspired by the real story. The reason it's a novel was that I didn't really think anyone would be interested in my story, but also at the time I wanted to write lots of novels, and I thought I just will write a couple about cruise ships, and then I can write about all the other things I've done, like living in Paris and London and New York and stuff. And also as a novel, I've got plausible deniability that I did any of the things in that book, because obviously I didn't do those things in it. It was everybody else.
Yeah, you're a good girl.
Yeah, totally.
Goes without saying. Absolutely. So I know that when I was cruising, my whole one cruise that I did, that I noticed that a lot of the passengers, well, maybe not a lot, but some of them were a little bit dopey and would ask really dopey questions. What's some of the most stupidest things that people have said to you?
When I was in the photography team, they did have a day where they wrote down all the questions. And this isn't a dopey question, but one of the funny things that people always asked us was, when will the photos for formal night be out? And so what they did is they created signs that they put on their hats that said the formal photos will be out, Wednesday night or whatever. And they wore them on their heads like this on a sign, and people would come up and say, what night will the formal photos be out? And it was funny. But, people, all the Americans used to get on and say, where's the buffet? Because, there's food, there's food 24 hours a day on most ships. And there were classic ones like, do these stairs go down? That was a good one. No, they only go up, madam. And people would ask, there was little urban legends about, there's someone inside their cabin ringing the concierge, which, what do they used to call it? There was another, and it wasn't called the concierge, it was called something else. I can't remember now. And they would ring and say, I can't get out of my cabin because one door's the bathroom and the other one says, do not disturb. That's like one of those. I don't know if it's true. I think it's an urban legend, but it probably is true. But passengers are hilarious and one of the hilarious things, which isn't a stupid question, but because when I worked on the ship where we developed the photos, people giving us rolls of film with them doing things that they don't really want other people to be seeing, they would be having to get the photos developed. So the guys in the photo lab used to have a box where they would make extra copies of all the juicy photos. And, oh, my gosh, we saw some really funny / disturbing photos. But, people were there to have a good time. And, very funny.
Yeah, people seem to let their hair down, don't they, when they're on holidays and forget that they still have to be behaved in some fashion. I know, like, you hear stories of people who, especially Aussies, who go to Bali or Thailand and just kind of abandon all sensibilities and just get totally debauched. Is that what holidays are for, to be debauched and let your hair down?
Well, crew are actually not allowed to get drunk because I have to say, for all the debauchery that does go on with crew and passengers, cruise lines are really serious about two things. One, customer service, and two, safety. Probably in the opposite order, safety and then customer service. And they are really serious about it. Like, they trained us. We did drills every week. We got our shore leave taken off us when the Coast Guard came on and did an audit of our drills. I was in a team where we didn't know what we were doing, and they took away our shore leave for a week and made us do the drill every day until we knew what to do. Like, they are serious about safety. And that's why crew aren't allowed to get drunk, because you have to be ready for an emergency 24/7. Having said that, lots of crews still got drunk. However, there were obviously people at different levels who were never drunk, because they do take passenger safety very seriously. I have to say that for them. Customer service as well. That's why it's great to be a passenger on a cruise ship, because the customer service is exceptional, pretty much without exception. Like, it's amazing, and that's because that's what they hang their hat on, I guess.
That's one of the things that I loved, how personable the crew were or are, and you could just sit down and they'd talk to you, because I like wandering off by myself, and I'd just go sit at a bar and get a drink, and they'd see you're by yourself and they'd come over and talk to you, and it's like some of the best conversations I had, because the crew are from everywhere.
Yes, and that was my job when I went as cruise staff, was just talking to people in bars and around the ship. And I would host karaoke and host games and things like that. The downside for us was also when you mentioned what I didn't like about ships, and when I went back the second time with my dream job, I discovered a whole other side as well. And that is, we weren't allowed to walk with another crew member. So when we walked through the ship, we had to walk alone, because otherwise it would dissuade passengers from coming to talk to us. We weren't allowed to dance with other crew members, because it sounds like it would be fun, but we had to dance in the disco certain nights of the week. And, there are times when you do not feel like dancing in a disco, and you had to go and do it till, 1 a.m. And if you were on the next morning in the Bahamas, wherever it was, we had a private island, you would have to be in the disco till at least 1 or 2, and then you'd be up at 5, to go and get volleyball ready or whatever. So, but you weren't allowed to dance with another crew member. So if I was walking or standing on the door of the show or in the disco and another crew member would come up, I'd be like, no, don't talk to me. Because inevitably the next staff meeting, they'd say, well, Cathryn, we saw you talking to someone outside the thing, or we saw you dancing with someone. Because other crew didn't have those restrictions, especially dancers and entertainers and stuff. They would just freely come up and chat, and we'd get in trouble for it every time. And I used to go into those meetings thinking, what are we going to be in trouble for today? It was sort of like being at school in that way. I felt like we were in trouble constantly for everything.
Oh, that's horrible. How do you get enthusiastic and excited about mingling with the passengers if you're constantly going, oh my God, I just breathed the wrong way?
Yeah, look, some people are naturals at it. The girls I mentioned who are still on ships, they're great at it and they love it. But also it just becomes normal. But I think, it's easy to get into trouble. And I suppose it becomes a bit of a mindset thing, doesn't it? When you start thinking, oh God, it just seems to pile on top of each other, that it's like every second thing you do, you feel like you're in trouble.
Yeah, no, I don't like the sound of that. So your book, Sex, Lies and Cruising, it's been out for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it's got a totally different name on it, Cathryn Chapman.
Yeah, Cathryn Chapman was my pen name. I like alliteration, and it's one of those things. I just sort of went, what, I'm just going to write this under a pen name, and so I created like a whole page that was Cathryn Chapman and all of that. But it's been fun. There are 2 other books planned. It's actually a trilogy, and they're fully outlined. The second one's partially written, which is called Love, Drugs, and New York, and it's just that then I got sidetracked by doing other things, and now I help other people write their books. That they just keep going on the back burner until I get, like, I think I posted my profile the other day, out of the blue, I got a message from someone going, oh, I came across your book and I couldn't put it down. I've been telling all my friends about it. Where, have you written any more? And I think, oh, shit, I really should finish those books.
You should really finish that. But I guess it's like when you're a mechanic, your car's a bit dodgy, and when you help other people write books, and someone just posted and said, I would be in trouble 24/7 as a crew member, as I love talking and listening to people. But you'd be all right, Rosa, if you're just talking to passengers.
Passengers, yeah. But you're not allowed to talk to passengers for more than 20 minutes. So if you were talking to a passenger and they could buy drinks and stuff, but if you were talking to them for more than 20 minutes and your boss walked past, they'd be like,
come on, move on to the next passenger.
Yeah.
So now you help people write books, and in full disclosure, Cathryn has helped me write a chapter for a book, I Fly, which came out a couple of weeks ago and went bestseller even before it launched, which is like, wow.
Here's what I did before the show.
Oh, I can't wait to get my copy. So exciting.
End of this week, probably.
Excellent. That would have, there I am. Oh, look at me. What a spunk.
Yeah.
My hair doesn't look as crazy as it does now. So with the process of helping other people to write books, how did you get into that? Because, did you go from being an entertainer to a book coach and a publisher just doesn't seem to be on the same path.
Yeah, well, I guess I've always been a reader and a writer. I guess we sort of find those things out about ourselves at school. I always loved writing. English was always my best subject. I always loved reading. My sister taught me to read when I was 4. So I was bored at school because I'd learned to read before I even got there, which turned out to not really be a great thing. But I was always into books. And then over the years, whenever I would tell people, because I spent 8 years traveling overseas and living in different places, including ships. And, I studied dance full time in New York. I was a dance student and all kinds of things. People would always say to me, I should write a book. So when I wrote the book, I had heaps of media because I invested in publicists. And look, I spent a lot of money on things that really were a waste of money in hindsight. I let other people talk me into things. For example, buying gift bags for editors. The publicist in LA sort of talked me into that, and it was a complete waste of money. I spent many thousands of dollars. So I was always like a book person. And then over the years, I knew I didn't want to stay I had a media consultancy job. I was like a marketing and media consultant for a nonprofit. And that was great. Like, I enjoyed aspects of it. But you know what it's like after years and years and years of doing something. I had 15 years of working with media. I was just getting a bit sort of tired of it. And I wrote the book thinking that was going to be my way out of it, but I didn't make enough money. I spent way more than I made. So that wasn't my way out. Then I ended up leaving that job and becoming a marketing consultant, but I still wasn't really feeling it. I was sort of not loving it anymore. And it becomes a drag then. The thing that you love starts becoming a drag because you don't love it. I went and studied coaching. Got an ICF recognised qualification in leadership, mentoring and coaching. Absolutely loved it. Spent a year trying to get a coaching business off the ground. And even though theoretically a trained coach can coach anyone on anything because you're only holding space, you're not giving advice, you have to have a niche for people to kind of know whether or not to come to you because it's quite a saturated market. I hired a mentor, a business mentor and coach who was amazing. And she said to me, look, you need to niche down. She asked me all these questions about my past. And she said, why don't you help people promote their books? And I went, interesting. And my husband said, that's what I said you should do. And
of course he did.
And then that's kind of how it happened. I said to her, look, I don't really want to help with promotion because that's the bit I'm actually kind of sick of. What I want to do is help people write their story and write the book because that's what I love. And she said, yeah, but if you help people with writing, you'll get stuck in the quagmire of people's minds when they're unsure and when they doubt themselves. And I said, yes, but I'm a trained coach. So this is the perfect marriage of the writing skills and knowledge as well as the coaching. I can help people get over the humps. So that's how my book coaching business was born. And now we've extended into offering publishing and all of that. But it's more facilitating of you self-publishing. We're not a traditional publisher. But that's how that all came together. And so now I've got all these coaching tools. If someone gets really stuck, I've got a coaching tool I can whip out, do a separate session with them, do like subconscious exercises. There's one I love, where people are asking their mentors for advice in a bit of a subconscious state, and it helps them work out what direction they should go in or unblocks them in some way. And it's amazing. So yeah, I just love it to bits.
Well, I have to say that I have worked with Cathryn and she's made me a better writer, and totally grateful for your wisdom and your expertise. And thank you so much for giving us those insights into cruising. I can't wait for it to be a TV series because I will be watching. That's right, my jam. I love those insider stories and looking at what goes on behind the scenes. Cathryn Mora, thank you for joining me this morning. You're amazing and have a great day.
Thank you much, Lee. I'm so glad that I could come and join you. I love this group. I've been really enjoying watching what everyone's obsessed with. So, yeah, it's been really fun. We could talk about this for hours.
We could. Maybe we could do a whole podcast on it.
For sure. Thanks, Nettie.
Okay. Thanks, Cathryn. Bye.